Welcome, everybody. This is the beginning of our season 2 mid-season break. So we're going to fill the time with some supplemental episodes and talk about both ourselves and I guess there's some other people are also making Star Trek stuff out there right now. So
not to my knowledge, no.
we can also check in with that sort of stuff. And so today we're going to talk about the most recent season of Picard season 2. Now, Ryan, I know you have thoughts.
Oh God, I have so.
I mean,
many
you don't have to go. You don't have to
Too
go first
many.
if you don't want to.
No, I would rather.
Too many thoughts.
Well, here's the thing. So look.
I have your text message, by the way.
You do. Okay.
Yeah.
So both season 1 and season 2 of Picard started so well for me personally that I was as excited and as on board and had without consciousness. Yes, without consciousness. Like those first 2 episodes raised my expectation for the rest of those seasons, both times, to a point where I thought this is going to be exactly what I, Ryan, want in a show featuring Jean-Luc Picard again. And season 1 duped me because I felt it went off the rails. I mean, I think we've talked about that before. I don't hold any animosity towards any of the performers because I thought everybody played their role perfectly for what they were given. I just thought the writing was not good. I thought the lines of the story arcs were fractured, were half baked, and they teased us with so many really great ideas in season 1. I won't continue on season 1 because we're not here to talk about that. Season 2, I felt again like, all right, they have a direction that they're going to go, and this is going to be awesome. And I just felt like it fell flat again for the rest of season 2 after episodes 1 and 2. So episodes 1 and 2 sets up Q, and also sets up the time jump back to
the filming date.
Right, exactly. To a little bit in the future. And I was all on board with all of that. Like, I don't have any inherent disposition one way or the other for time travel episodes. Have happened in every single iteration of Star Trek. So people who just inherently hate Star Trek time jump episodes, I'm not one of those people. I'm not against the concept. It was only that after episodes 1 and 2, I was totally on board. And how about somebody else pick up where they thought?
Well,
you're being haunted right now.
I know.
Yeah.
There's a Johnny.
It's so creepy.
Yeah, it just keeps popping in. The main problem that I was forcing myself to overlook and to try to talk myself through, maybe here's a reason, is Guinan. They met in Time's Arrow in TNG, and that's one of my very favorite episodes. So I've seen it a lot, and it was but you just shit on my episode. Why would you ignore that?
Unless Guinan can somehow time travel.
Brian,
too,
I thought you had
it makes no sense.
Brian, I thought,
yeah.
Brian, because I mentioned that to you at some point, and you had not hand waved it, but you had some sort of explanation as to why that might work.
I don't recall.
Was she hit with a mallet? Because that's the only.
Somebody dropped a piano on her, and
Right.
she saw all these little birds flying around.
Yeah.
Your argument had something to do with the fact that they were jumping back through time from a different future or something like that.
I mean, basically the only way you can reconcile all of the time travel stories Star Trek has done at this point is by putting them all into slightly different universes.
Yeah.
So to somehow, for whatever reason, the
In
time
that
travel
universe.
depicted in the season 2 of Picard is a different universe than.
Yeah, but it doesn't
Time's
work
Arrow.
like that because the universe
I
is the same
Yeah, definitely
for
not.
that character up until that point because it happened in his past.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't work because of the reveal at the very end of season 2 where Wesley returns and says there's one true timeline and we're responsible for
Right.
keeping
yeah.
it
Containing
yeah.
containing it.
Which was the rest of us are like trying really hard to retcon, like, okay, it's okay. They didn't screw up. It's fine. It's different timelines or whatever. And then Wesley comes to say, nope, it's not different timelines.
So yeah.
What?
Go ahead, Matt.
What bugged me, one I thought was cool, is that when he met Guinan in the first episode, she was at number 10 Forward Street.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool as hell.
Yeah.
But then
they went,
in the past, she's at number 10 Forward Street. So you would think that Guinan has engineered everything. So that she gets to be on the Enterprise NCC 1701D. Gets to be the bartender at their bar.
100% in the 25th century.
Forward.
It makes so much sense for that bar to be named 10 Forward.
It's awesome. It's a great thing.
Perfect.
I loved it. Yeah.
And what's crazy,
it's a cool Easter egg when it's her in the future.
Yes, it's great.
Yeah,
it's 100% perfect. I loved it. But
what's crazy is that the kind of the two levels of continuity and Easter egg stuff like that, right? Like, so because one thing I was ready to like, I hope somebody got fired for that one, was there's a throwaway joke in an episode of Voyager where they go back to 1996, another time travel episode where they travel to when the episode is being produced magically. But there's a throwaway joke about how there was a huge earthquake in 2024, I think, and all of Los Angeles fell into the sea, which is just writers living in Los Angeles taking a dig at Los Angeles, which is funny and cool, but it's just a throwaway thing. But canonically, it establishes that a huge earthquake wiped out Los Angeles before the events of Picard season 2, and so I was ready. But apparently, like when he first beams, there's the first shot is of this plaque or something that says this is the only surviving neighborhood to survive the quake. Blah blah blah. So like they actually cover that aspect. They cover this one throwaway line from the middle of Voyager, but then they completely disregard a 2-part TNG episode that is kind of integral to their whole relationship of these two major characters.
And like I don't want us to be perceived as people who are get off my lawn Star Trek fans.
Agreed. Yeah,
because I do truly appreciate the ability that, or like for example, the actors are fantastic in this show. Again, like even season 2, and I just feel like the writing isn't respectful of what has already been established for those who tie their roots down back to TNG and earlier. And that's where, like, I don't want to be a get off my lawn dude. I really don't. Like, I try so hard to love these shows.
Well, most of it is because I think one of the disappointments that I have with it is a very clear example of that 10 forward thing. You can put her bar at 10 forward in the future. There's so many other things you could reference to have her bar in the past and make it something else. Like,
just make it a bar.
It could be on Mark Twain Street.
Yeah, like
if you want to reference something out of her past.
There's a whole bunch of things that you can do where it's like you can fit in an Easter egg. You can fit in an Easter egg in every scene, but it's just like at least pay some attention as to what you're Easter egging to not make it to have some semblance of sense, because it's pretty easy to stick.
So many. Yeah, sorry, Travis.
Yeah, no, there's just easy ways to like shunt in Easter eggs that don't affect anything really, that are just Easter eggs for the sake of Easter eggs, but to constantly like pull Easter eggs out that actually have effects, like it means you have to put effort into picking Easter eggs that are going to actively screw up like logical inconsistencies versus going like, oh well, why would she have 10 forward in the past? Let's just do something else. Time 0, she met Mark Twain, so she's gonna have her bar on Twain Street. Like
Oh
like
yeah,
it's not,
Clemens Street, something like that. Yeah,
exactly.
Like there's all sorts of things that you could do.
It could be Samuel's bar on
and like that's
Street.
That would be
perfect.
awesome.
And that's fine for it's you're 100% correct, Travis, and that's an Easter egg. But then you go back to a cliffhanger 2-part episode of like that ended one season of the show and began another season of a show and completely disregard it. like completely. Not only that, but it is, at least as far as the circles that I'm connected with, a very popular episode. I don't know if it's one of the 10 best in TNG according to blah blah blah, but Times Arrow is a good 2-part episode, and it's a cliffhanger. There's only 5 cliffhangers in the opportunities in all of TNG, like for season to season.
Also, isn't like so because Times Arrow happens, right, and they go back to 2024, they know that Data's head is buried somewhere in their friend who has died and is gone. They could bring back to life by digging up his head. But
I didn't even think about that.
Doesn't occur to anybody.
But you wouldn't do that though, because to dig it up would then
and that's totally fair.
Timeline.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
I think Star Trek is unique in the sense that I can't think of any other franchise, with the possible exception of Doctor Who, that has been around for this long with this much screen time of stuff to all keep track of and to connect this bit to that bit.
To keep the lore all straight.
It has to be a full-time job for someone.
Or to keep the data straight.
The data.
Data.
So that's the other thing that I want to say as a caveat in the midst of bitching about I hope somebody got fired, is the fact that I really do think Star Trek is a uniquely difficult challenge in that regard. Like the only other equal I could think of is Doctor Who, and just the tone of Doctor Who makes that stuff matter less, because timey-wimey, who cares, right? Doctor Who is very upfront about we're timey-wimey, don't
pay attention.
Don't pay attention too hard. But Star Trek doesn't really have that out, but it has a similar scale of lore issue.
And Marvel has the medium change, right? Like you can make Marvel shows and movies that don't adhere to the source material, and you're like, well, yeah, but we're going from comics to TV. We can change some things.
Exactly.
Because they change things all the time in the comics.
So you can get away with that. So.
And now with Doctor Strange, they've now officially introduced the idea of the multiverse, which is now they're out for all of that stuff, which is fine. It's like that's
cool.
That's a storytelling escape hatch, but that's exactly what you should be doing as a writer. Building yourself escape hatches.
So there's been a lot of crapping on, and I think all of us were not super thrilled with how Picard season 2 went overall, which is fine. I will note one thing that I thought about season 2 of Picard when I was watching it was, particularly it hit me later in the season, like when we got near the last couple episodes, was that I think all of the sort of storylines that they were setting up and following through on, again, we're nitpicking little things here and there, but I think the overall story that they were trying to tell was fascinating and could have been really good. Especially in those last couple episodes, the problem hit with the fact that they were just trying to tell so many different things in such a short time frame, because it was also a shortened season compared to season 1, right? It was a couple episodes less.
I want to say yes.
I think so.
Which again, COVID is a thing, and that I get that, but also just the last 2 episodes are so dense with resolutions and tying loose ends and stuff that it all felt really rushed. And it was like, if this season had 24 episodes or was split into a couple seasons in some way, shape, or form, you could have all of those different storylines, and I think that they would work. I think that they could work well. I don't think there's fundamentally any of those pieces that I'm like, oh, that concept is totally broken, right? Like we're complaining about the time jump. It's like, well, Guinan didn't necessarily need to be there, or they could write around that, because that's something you could easily write around.
Oh yeah.
So you could easily do that, and it's just like the full season I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, man, I really like this angle, and I really think this is interesting, and I really like this character work, and like this would be cool. But because there's so many different things going on, nothing gets room to breathe. Nothing gets the time to develop in a way that feels really good. And then when you get to the end, everything gets buttoned up so fast that it just kind of flies by. And it's like, I really felt like there was a lot of good stuff in there. So like I nitpick about the little stuff and how certain things were executed on. But I think I walked away from season 2 going like, man, I wish they had either a couple less storylines and saved it for season 3, or a handful of more episodes. They could let some of these different things play out a little more to formulate something that would feel more cathartic at the end.
I agree, and I think I recall making a similar point in one of our supplemental episodes from before. I think on Discovery season 3. I forget, Brian. But like, yeah, the idea that there's a lot of cool ideas and cool setups in there, and there's almost too many to pay everything off, which is what Travis is, and it's like you need to. I just wish you like would
rein
focus
it
a
in
little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Matt, you're gonna say something, Matt?
Oh, I was saying, I think with this goes for I think all the new Star Trek stuff. They're still keeping these episodes at a certain length, at like a broadcast length for a time.
Yeah.
Rather than I read a interview with Seth
are they
MacFarlane.
Are they still broadcasting?
They're not. They're only on Paramount Plus now.
Oh, okay.
But I had read an interview with Seth MacFarlane saying it was so great now that the new season of Orville is on Hulu because he can have an episode that is 52 minutes, and the next week the episode can be 110 minutes, or not 110 minutes. It can be.
It can if he wants.
It can. Yeah, it can be 68 minutes. Who cares? It's so that way he doesn't have to cut out these really cool little moments that make.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought
television so good. He doesn't have to try to. Hey, this plot can now be resolved in a few more minutes of an episode, so now it's so much better. But as the Star Trek, as far as I know, they're keeping these episodes to like a maximum like broadcast length.
And I think this is one of the biggest problems that I have, and this is all sort of tied together, and it goes back to season 1 of Picard. There are so many amazing story ideas. The Seven being a Borg queen, amazing story arc. The like Sochi just being, a descendant of Data is in and of itself an amazing story arc that if it was left alone and there was nothing else to compete with, would have manifested itself, I think, in greater form.
That could have been an entire episode to focus on that.
Right.
Great.
If you gave
the idea of XBs, I wish we had spent more time on.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So many.
If you gave us the script for the entire season, we could make like 4 seasons of television out of those.
Exactly right. And the same thing is with with Picard season 2. What were we going to say, Matt?
I say, or make one old school season of Star Trek when there were 24 episodes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Instead of 10.
And the other thing that really suffers from that compressed timeline, I think, is the relationships between characters, because to me they feel much more artificial and less natural. They don't feel like they were grown. They felt like they were produced, if that makes any sense. Like,
no, I agree. There's a certain element of like, just here's a moment of these two people, having a conversation, right? And it's like, it's nothing earth-shattering. It's not about whether the ship is going to blow up in the next 10 minutes or not, right? It's just two people walking down the corridor going like,
it's Troy and Riker sitting in 10 forward before a scene starts, and they have they're having a little banter.
They have 5 lines between themselves, and it's
like, or Crusher and Troy like doing their yoga thing and going like, "Hey, you got that glow on you. What's going on?" Right? Like that sort of like that makes it feel like real people with real relationships, as opposed to these very like operatic kind of presentations of these characters of everybody is going through these huge things all the time, and
it's exhausting.
And I feel like
I don't think that's a Picard specific.
Well, so I think
that's a modern storytelling critique. I think
absolutely agree on that part, and I do want to say I think it's a problem with earlier Discovery, but Discovery season 4 I think gets away from that a little bit. And even more so, I think Strange New Worlds is avoiding that entirely so far, in the sense that like, okay, we're gonna watch number 1 and Noonien and Singh just have a conversation, right? And we're just gonna see Chapel be Chapel for a minute, and that's it. So
and
I want to give them credit where credit is due in that regard.
And I feel that it is a bit of a byproduct of like, well, we have to have a million things happen because we have to reach plot point F by the end of this episode, and we have to reach plot point G in this other plot line, and we have to like keep hitting all these beats really quickly, because if we don't get to this point by the end of this episode, we only have how many episodes left. and it
so
it snowballs from that.
There's an advantage to having the episodic storytelling where the episodes themselves are self-contained, and you can have miniature character arcs in those and character moments and character development in the span of the episodic, as opposed to like we have to tell the bigger picture right now. We don't have time for these little tiny interactions.
We don't have time to argue
about time. Yeah, I mean, this is not to talk about Strange New Worlds. We're talking about Picard, but like if you want to hear praise, I have 10 out of 10 thoughts on Star Trek. Strange
we'll have
New
an
Worlds.
upcoming episode.
Like there's great Star Trek out there, and I think that Picard had some really, really great moments in it. The one that sticks out for me was when they're in Chateau Picard, and it was a casual line delivered by Sir Patrick Stewart that was just beautiful, and it told so much. Where he was in there, and I forget exactly how it went, so I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but oh my gosh, her name's escaping me. Girardi and Picard were in there, and he said, my family fled during World War II, and she's like, oh, where'd they go? And he just said England, and like that told so much about that character's story arc. Like he's a Frenchman, but the reason why he has a British accent is because his family, for generations after World War II, fleeing the Nazis, lived in England, and that's where his culture was also. It was beautiful, and it was told in one word, in one exchange, and it was wonderful storytelling. And I turned.
It added so much color.
Yes, and I turned to Tara, and I was like, that is one of the most beautiful moments I've seen in Star Trek in a long time. And
is another moment similar to that I loved that was great is like that is exactly what this kind of should do, right? Like when you're building the lore, or you're building out the history of a character or whatever, in the way it can make you see and feel different things about what you've already seen, right? So there's the I think it's first season TNG, where No One Has Gone Before, where the first time we see the Traveler and the ship goes crazy and it goes out to the middle of nowhere, and like time and thought and everything all collides, right? And so Picard sees his mom offering him a cup of tea, and we don't, at that point when that episode was produced and first aired, we knew nothing about Picard's family history or anything like that. It was just this one brief moment, and then it went on. And then in Picard season 2, you had this moment where he recounts, like, I used to imagine when you find out, okay, his mom died when he was young, and so she was never as old as she appears in the TNG episode. There's this beautiful moment of like connecting those threads of going, I used to imagine her like that.
I wrote that down right here. Like
I wrote it down. I know, I wanted to make sure I got to it before you did.
No, but all I wrote in my mind was Picard's mother. How haunting! Because like how haunting is that in retroactively? How
so
haunting
now so I rewatched that episode as
which episode is it, by the way?
Where No One Has Gone Before.
Okay.
We just did Dying of the Light mission recently, and so it was kind of a similar premise. So I went back and watched that, and I watched
season
that
3,
moment fairly recently.
Spoilers.
Yeah. So I have watched that episode since I've watched season 2 of Picard, and that moment really does hit differently in a really wonderful way.
Yeah. So they have the ability, and they not only do they have the ability, they are doing it actively. They're telling really good stories, but to Travis's point, it's just too, and to Matt's,
it's so much.
It's just too much. Yeah. It's just too much.
And I think that's the crux of it, is trying to do too much. And now looking at my big board with all of the Tempest missions up on it, now my blood is running cold a little bit.
Well, Brian, you can't show us the big board.
I can't show you the big board. I can't let you guys in here. You'll see the big board.
Is that a Strange Love reference?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, team. Good job.
But no, I think that's the basic. I think that's the basic issue, right? Is like you have all of these cool ideas, and so there's the writing advice, the very famous writing advice of kill your darlings, right? Like you have these things that you love in your first draft, but they just don't fit in the final overall as one cohesive thing. They just mess up the one cohesive thing, right? So I feel like there are story darlings there that needed to be killed and never got killed.
Why don't we go to what we liked about Picard? Because we can kind of.
Well, I think we just were
killing. Yeah. I mean, we're almost. Oh yeah, I guess we kind of were.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I don't. I'm trying to think back of the varying storylines in Picard season 2, and I don't think there were any that that I was like, man, I hate this storyline that's happening. Like I don't think the entire season
I liked I liked all of the threads.
Yeah, it's just like the threads were messy and weren't able to connect properly. And then I have little nitpicks of how they finished one thing or another. Before we started recording this thing, me and we were talking about the Wesley at the end and how like he shows up and says like, hey, do you want to join the Travelers? And then they beam out. And it's like you could just have them, travel out, or like why would you have them beam? Like you have a set thing, and it's supposed to just be this like half-hearted Easter egg right at the end. So like why would you not just be like, well, we'll just do the thing that they always do? And it's just like it's a misstep that seems really nitpicky but also odd to me. Especially when you do such things of like having 10 Forward be the street that Guinan's bar is on. Like you take the time to make
or
sure
the plaque that acknowledges the earthquake throwaway line from Voyager, right?
Like
you took the time the prop department made that plaque, right?
Yeah.
Like you took time to do that.
They were so detailed. I saw this on a YouTube video from Trek Culture. They were so detailed that they recreated a poster from City on the Edge of Forever.
Yes,
to be when Picard beams in way in the background. There is a poster. It's so small you can barely see it. There's a poster for a fight for a boxing match that they replicated from City on the Edge of Forever. It's the most stupid little Easter egg, but they were so detailed they did that. It's crazy.
Yeah. I just want to meta break right here for the audience and say the reason why we're not stepping over or not allowing, it's not that we're not allowing Tara to speak. She has been absent right now trying to deal with a sick child, and we're sorry that because she had her thoughts about all good
things.
All good things.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't all good things.
Time
zero. Yeah, time zero. And she hasn't spoken since, but that's only because she physically left the speaking arena.
And hilariously, you were gone when we were trying to record the episode before we got to this. And then then we were like, we're gonna go ahead and stop recording the episode and we'll just do a tech talk. And then
we were supposed to
I gotta go.
We were supposed to be recording an episode of season 3 right now, but Tara and I are dealing with a sick child.
Infants do not like sore throats. Sure.
You know what I really loved in season 2 is you find out Jean-Luc Picard's father's full name, because you never know that. It's Gaius Baltar Picard.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, that was a great crossover. Good pickup, Matt. That was great.
So I will say, I had this conversation with Ryan recently, specifically after watching Ghostbusters Afterlife, that season 2 of Picard avoided this recent trope that I am now completely done with, that I feel like season 1 fell into, as well as Ghostbusters Afterlife and Last Jedi, in the sense that like, okay, we have this continuation of this franchise that you loved as a kid, of your heroes doing awesome things, whatever. And now we're bringing that franchise and those characters back after 20 years, whatever. So now that they're all old, and at least one of them is super bitter and angry about how everything they did in life was actually a failure and didn't mean anything, right? Like, because that is like, I love a lot about Last Jedi. I think overall Last Jedi is a very good film, but that is definitely Luke's character in Last Jedi. That is Harold Ramis's character in Ghostbusters Afterlife, even though Harold Ramis isn't with us anymore, and it's Picard in season 1. And I was very like, can we just have like, we can have a show about Picard doing something else important, but as an older man, without like invalidating all of the earlier years that we've already seen of his life, right? And like, obviously season 2 couldn't really do that because season 1 already had, but season 2 still didn't do it. Thankfully, it was just like, here's a new thing. and it has to be Picard because of story reasons. But it's not like automatically taking the 7 seasons of everything he did on that TV show that we all loved and throwing it all under the bus.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would push back on that season 1 take a little bit and say that it's not that like what he did was not what we thought it was, but for season 1 I actually really loved it because he was still so much the same character in the beginning of season 1 of Picard that he was at the end of TNG, but everything around him, the culture had changed so much that he could no longer accept it. Like I thought that was a really interesting story opportunity to explore. It's like
he was the old man on the lawn at that point.
No, but he wasn't even the old man on the lawn. He was like he wasn't crotchety and saying like, but he was still true to his own core values, whereas the culture had changed so much around him that he could no longer accept where being affiliated with that organization, because it was no longer aligned with his ideals the way that it used to. That's what I loved about season 1 potential, but it didn't go there. So
yeah, I would say we're probably saying the same thing in different ways. Like
I'm just saying way better. That's all.
Yeah. In the sense that like he spent his entire career and adult life, embodying the best of Starfleet ideals, right? And we saw him 7 years doing that. But then season 1 is showing us, oh, well, Starfleet isn't that. But
Starfleet became not that between the events of TNG. It's not like Starfleet wasn't that then.
Right.
Starfleet then became that, and like that.
Right.
And I can see that as a point of view. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also like, even if they do it well, doesn't mean that it's still not a trope. And like if you're kind of like, I'm kind of tired of seeing this particular angle being done.
Okay.
If it's done well, maybe it still just doesn't hit well.
That's valid.
So I still thought it was fine myself.
Okay. Travis said it the best. Okay. Yeah. We get it, Travis.
All right. Boot Travis from meeting.
Got it.
Yeah, like I'm just in my head, I'm trying to think back to some of the various storylines. I would have liked to have learned more about the ancestor. What's her name?
Renee.
Yeah,
Renee.
There was that's
Renee,
there's
Pick
no
a
reason
different fucking name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it's like girl.
Well, yeah, it didn't need to be
Renee.
It didn't need to be a Picard at all, and she really didn't need to be Renee Picard.
No, I don't understand how he doesn't know the name Renee Picard, because that's a pretty big damn deal.
Not only that,
I think that would go down in your family's history.
Not only that, but he stated in Star Trek Generations, like the lineage and what he was so proud of, and how desperately he was upset that his family would no longer go on. That was a pivotal character moment in Star Trek Generations, where he said the Picards who fought Trafalgar, the Picards who settled the first Martian colonies. It should have been, if they were going to pursue that line, it should have been a mission to Mars with a Picard, because that fits. Instead, now there's this other thing, and it not only is it another thing, but it's Renee Picard, which is also the name of his nephew.
And she's from France. Why is she from France?
The
Picards left France to go to England.
Yep. That was another.
Yeah. So it's just those, again, the storyline conceptually is good, and then you just keep sort of like shoehorning details for no reason, and like it's just that's the so, but I still liked it. Like conceptually, the idea of like, also, if it wasn't a Picard, you just go back and it's just this mission that you're trying to continue to make happen.
Yeah.
Which leaves all
it's
sorts of
Kirk
extra
didn't need to be related to the whales, right? To make that movie.
Was he related to the whales?
Yes.
Now he is.
Yeah.
I'm sure he slept with an actual literal whale at some point.
Yeah, they had cetacean ops.
Yeah.
That would be an amazing tie-in. I hope they do that
Humpback
someday.
is right.
Oh God. I hope Lower Decks does that. Where they're like, one of the cetacean ops whales is a descendant of the whales.
of Gracie.
Of the whales.
Yeah, of Gracie.
That'd be hilarious.
I'm gonna go try to relieve Tara so that she can get her voice on here. So I'll be back.
Her voice is much better than yours.
Yeah.
Especially, have you ever listened to it slow down and then sped up again? Sounds just like Alice and Janney.
It's
true, it does. Yeah, so what did you think of the like the Borg angle in 2? Because I think like we had a lot of discussion about the Borg angle in season 1.
I think that's I'm holding off judgment because I think that was mostly a setup for season 3. Like whatever prompted the Borg to do that, to come in the first place and say we want to talk to Picard and only Picard, there obviously something is motivating that, and I feel like that is what season 3 is going to be.
I wonder if season 3 is going to deal with the end of season 1, the AI, the ultimate AI in a different part of the universe or whatever.
Yeah, the AI that lives outside the galaxy.
The AI Cthulhu, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So, because that would be a way to tie it together, at least in an interesting way, I feel like. So
we'll see. We'll have to find out.
What were we doing? We were talking about something, and like something popped into my head, and it has since vanished.
Popped right in there.
Just popped right in.
Just popped.
Couldn't help it.
It's a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
I was trying to think of a show that
best deliveries in any movie ever.
Like of course it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. What else would it be?
So my question is, after all of the stuff that we've talked about, I think a little bit positive, but mostly negative. Particularly like I think we all came down as like the plot threads that were there, we can get behind.
There's a whole bunch of potential. Yep.
But the execution of it was just not there. Although I think we all agreed the performances were pretty strong, though. I
liked it enough to watch it to the end, and I would like to see the next season. So
yeah, I was gonna say, are we excited about season 3?
Well, let me say this. I think, and this is one of the things that I'm recollecting from the thing that I sent Brian in that text message tirade, was that what it seemed like to me, which is the problems for both seasons 1 and 2, and I know we're not trying to talk about problems, but like to back up Travis's point about like these threads are all really good ideas. It seemed like there was a what's the word called when you get together and you think of all the possible ideas,
brainstorming.
A brainstorming session of plot lines for Picard, where it's like, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that, we could do that, we could do that, and then the producers walked into the room and said, approved, get it done in 6 episodes.
Yeah
And then
do I love it all. Do it all.
I
think that's exactly right. I think that's the nail on the head, is all of these great ideas, but at some point it's the Michelangelo quote of like, I didn't sculpt David, he was already in there, I just took away the excess, right? Like that idea of creating something as removing excess as opposed to assembling something, and I think they just didn't remove the excess.
And so I my intuition tells me that this was a production choice at the onset, where like at the highest levels, where they're like, we want all of this and include it all and try to make it work. And when you think about all the thread lines and plot lines that both seasons 1 and 2 tried to incorporate, like they did as about as good a job as they could have possibly done, trying to cover all of that ground in such a short period of time, because it's just impossible. It's impossible. Like, you could have an entire show, literally an entire show, about 7 of 9 being the Borg Queen and have it being amazing. You could have an entire show about Girardi becoming the next Borg Queen. Like those 2 threads could be perfectly tied together, and like that could have been all of seasons 1 and 2 of a different show that wasn't named Picard. But
you can have the Ravi 7 romance thing develop, but it's tough when 2/3 of the season Ravi is just distraught about the death of Elnor.
Yeah,
it's like they get some time together, but the entire time she's angry and upset and like, I got to focus on the mission because if we fix this, he's going to come back to life. Which then by the time of the end of it, you're like, well, okay, I see that they spent some time together, but like she wasn't focused on anything like that for the entire time. Whereas if you had more time for that plot thread to happen, she could get over her feelings about Elnor's death and move on, and then like see what's in front of her, and that becomes the thing. So like, Which I still like the story. Again, it's another plot thread that I thought was interesting and cool, and I'm all about that. They needed 10 more episodes to let all these other plot lines exist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I will. So I'll say this, and then we'll wrap it up. But I will always defend, having now lived in Los Angeles for a number of years and worked in the entertainment industry in basically every capacity possible. I will always defend the idea of like, you have no idea what the storytellers were actually fighting with in the real world in terms of studio notes or COVID production schedule, whatever. Like, it's very easy for us to sit on the outside and go, oh, the thing you handed to me on a silver platter, well, I didn't like how the garnish was laid out, right? Very, very easy for us to do that.
Making a film is hard.
But actually spending millions and tens of millions of dollars on telling these grand epic stories, the fact that it happens at all, ever, at any point with anything is always amazing. So like, I just want to like, I want to be very clear that me, and I think all of us in general, are like, we're going, well, the parsley could have been this way a little bit more, right? As opposed to like, you fucking cooked us dinner, thanks, man. You know what I mean? Like,
we watched Star Trek today.
Yeah. So that's go ahead, Travis.
So I was gonna say, so excited for season 3? Yay, nay? I think
yes,
my own personal thing, I'm excited, particularly because so the leaks have come out. Like, they did that little like reveal video about how most of the original TNG cast is basically coming back for it, and the end of season 2 wrapped up so many different storylines to at least like can now be eschewed and kind of moved on from in a lot of ways. It feels very clean slate, and the fact that season 3 is going to be the final season, like it's already been decided that it's the final season. So the idea is like, I think I'm more hopeful for season 3 in part because it's like, it feels like now's the chance for them to be more streamlined, right? Like, they're like, we're gonna have the crew back. It's like, okay, well, whatever this big threat that the Borg came to try and help stop, which, Ryan, I don't know if you were here.
That's it. That's the focus.
Yeah, that's whatever that happens to be. I personally am hoping that it's the AI, the rogue AI from the other part of the galaxy or whatever at the end of season 1, which would be a nice through tie. But yeah, so it's like the old crew's getting back together to fight this massive threat that the first 2 seasons kind of start projecting to get us to this clean slate. And I feel like I'm more excited because it feels like it'll be much easier for them to make it a cleaner, less 15 different plot storylines happening at once. Instead, it's just we accept the fact that this final season is going to be the TNG crew getting together one last time to ride. If that's not what it ends up being, like, it's entirely possible they could come up with 15 different plot threads and do the same thing again. But I think I'm more hopeful knowing that this is the last season. They know it's the last season, and they wiped so much of the plot threads away at the end of 2.
Agreed.
That they have the opportunity to be like, okay, we can just make this fun single season of the adventure that everybody has been looking for, type of thing. And all the praise they're getting from Strange New Worlds, to be frank, they have to be at least noticing and being like, well, this is clearly getting all of the praise, so maybe try to stick a little bit with that storyline formatting a little bit. I don't know.
We'll see.
I'm looking forward to 3 though.
Well, let's go around the horn. So that was Travis's thoughts. What do you think about season 3, Matt?
No, I'm excited for it. I am interested to see what they go for it, and anything that gets anyone from the Next Generation together again makes me happy, because that's the Star Trek I think we all grew up on, by and large. So anything with them is great. Seeing LeVar Burton and anything.
Geordi LaForge is going to be great.
Yeah, that's going to be wonderful. So I'm very excited for it. I mean, I can't say I'm very excited, but I'm absolutely going to watch it as soon as it comes out. So,
well, yeah, there's
I
mean, there's no way I'm not going to watch it. I will say this. I am not as optimistic as Travis. Only because I had learned this lesson from the prequels. I was as excited as one could be for episode 1, then it got burned, and I was like, well, it's fine. They'll figure it out before episode 2. And then episode 2 happened, and I am now
broke you.
Yeah, I'm now the same way, frankly, with Picard. Like, I don't look at this show the same way that I did before. So I will watch it. I am closing my clamshell to protect myself in terms of expectation. But I will say that the teaser trailer thing that they put together with Riker and Picard like got my juices flowing. It did. I'm gonna be excited.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, you didn't? It was a publicity
it's real
thing.
Quick.
Yeah, it's like 6 seconds of them like something's on the other side of the door and they're arming phasers and they're and then
because and then after that fades, they go to like the list of all the people that are going to be there.
Yeah,
right? It's like Frakes and like
I still have my reservations that there's just going to be too much, because even if you're right, Travis, and the story arc is threaded from season 1 to 2, where it's the Borg and the Federation against the AIs, I just feel like there's going to be too much.
That's fair. They also somehow have to wedge the Romulans in there because for some reason
the Romulans are part of it. Yeah,
it's been like a very pervasive, despite not really needing to be, thing for the 2 previous seasons. They have they must really love the color green, I think.
They love the Borg and they love the Romulans. So that's my thoughts, Brian.
I would say I'm probably somewhere in between you guys. Because yes, I mean, a pattern has been established of trying to do a lot and probably being better off with trying to do a little bit less. However, that being said, it does seem like the setup is hopefully going in that direction. And the other issue generally being, like we talked about, of, all of the moments always being too big and not having moments of just like, these people are just being people for a minute, and you can tell that they care about each other, like they're just not to like do the Galaxy Quest quote, but like, they cared about each other, right? Like I feel like that's the piece that's been missing in a lot of the new Star Trek, but there's no way you can't have that if you have the entire TNG cast there, because they all are actually that with each other. So there's no way you're going to have all of them on screen and not have that sense of feeling. So you can't miss that beat. I'm fingers crossed. I'm
hopefully
I'm confident in saying that they won't miss
that will break your heart.
Who's the producer now of Star Trek Picard?
Terry Matalas.
Terry Matalas says, Brian, hold my beer.
So yes. So as long as the storytelling is a little bit more focused, and the characters, they just let the characters breathe the way that characters need to breathe, I think it has a lot of potential to be really, really awesome. So cautiously, but optimistic. And we'll call that the wrap up. What do you say? Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks, Tara, for all of your no, seriously, thank you to Tara for being a mom, because holy shit.
Yeah,
good Lord. Like, I have cats and they just piss me the hell off.
A mom to 3 boys.
And I tried to relieve her and she said no.
I don't
so
I don't get it. I literally do not get how anybody is psychologically capable of having that much patience and goodwill towards those things.
I only have one, and there are times where I want to throw her in the trash.
Like,
I don't know how.
We're cutting this. We're cutting.
Like, I have 2 cats, and I tell them to shut the fuck up all the time. Like,
I
don't know. Yeah, don't know. Anyway, all right. Thank you for joining us, for everyone, for the very first season 2 Tempest Talk episodes. We'll have more stuff like this during our mid-season break, talking about Strange New Worlds and probably Obi-Wan and probably other stuff, and probably
Prodigy.
Lots of other stuff, Prodigy and Lower Decks and Discovery as well. So stay subscribed to the podcast, because that stuff will be coming down the pipe. And until next time, we'll see you out there.
See you out there.
Keep watching the skis.